park here in a small group, but that's okay. And, you know, and we want to thank Matthew for being our coordinator. And thank you for coming up and being our coordinator. When we first started, like the Lep Club, or DMA, I don't know about D, but I was a novice. Okay, I taught school. I came here. The first thing I came to was on a Sunday to learn how to have a butterfly garden. And then Patty, who was out there working, she's like, you really should come and learn about butterflies. So I was like, okay, well, I did. And one of the people we had, Nick, was up here like this, talking and everything like that. And I always tell this story. He was using these big humongous words. And I went and I said at the end, I said, Nick, I really can't do this. And he says, you can and you will. I said, you forget. I teach preschool and little kids. I need little words. And I need to teach people with little words, not all the big fancy words, even though I do know them and Dee knows quite a few more than I do. But anyway, we started, and that first year I raised some black swallowtails and I raised some monarchs, and I raised them in a pretzel rod container. And that's how I started. And then a friend of ours, that's one of the members here, Kathy, I don't know if it was that year, I think it was the next year, she said, does anybody want to see a monarch egg? And I said, yeah, I do. So I went over and saw the monarch egg, and she showed it to me, and she said, you know, this is going to be a caterpillar tomorrow. So I was like, okay. So she gave it to me. She said, if nobody else is interested, go ahead, have it. So I came and I looked at it and everything like that. And when I got home, I'm like, I can hardly see this thing. I must have dropped off, or something. So I brought it home. The next morning, there was this teeny little hole, and she raised them, the very tiny ones, in a bag like this. And that's how I've started to do that. I've started with either my black swallowtails or even my monarchs. And when they're so tiny that you can't really see them too much, I raise them in here. I clean out the bag every day. I make sure I know where they are. But to me, it was an easier way to keep track of how small they were and where they were and everything like that. So then after they get a little bit bigger, sometimes I put them in there. And then my husband made me a caterpillar butterfly house. And when they get big enough, I put them in there, and that's where they chrysalis and emerge and everything like that. So the main thing that I love about the Lep Club when we first went into it is the fact that when we came, like I said, I didn't know anything, but everybody was like so willing to share their ideas and so willing to say, oh, I'm doing this, and I've got them going on this, and and everything like that. And it was just remarkable that we just all learned so much from each other. And I think that was the main thing. And we became friends, and we all can, talk to each other and everything like that. And it's just a remarkable club like that. And the Natural History Society, you can see all the wonderful things, the mounts and things that they have here. They have so many other wonderful clubs and everything. But for me, the main thing was the Lep Club. And the main thing was sharing. Like some of the people that are here, we've shared things with, and we've told them, well, this works for me. Usually the beginning of the year, we do talk about maybe what we want to do at the end. By the next month, we are maybe sharing each other caterpillars, and it's usually moths that we can tell you. We usually share some moths, caterpillars, and you have to have the right plant. And when I teach kids, except for the black swallowtails, for most of them, I always say to them, well, you can have candy and pizza and, roast beef and all this. I said, some of these caterpillars, like the monarchs, when I show them a monarch, I said, they can only eat this. This is the only thing they can eat. And they look at me, and I'm like, yep, that's all they can eat. So you have to have this kind of plant to be able to have them. Like Charlotte and her husband have seen some of my Cercopia caterpillars, and seen that I teach the little kids with all about that. And that's my thing. My thing is to teach little children so that they can hopefully carry on this idea of nature with butterflies and moths for their generations and future generations to do this. So that's why I love the Lep Club. I think it's just a great sharing place. And I hope if you're not a member, maybe you'll consider being a member next year. I mean, we only have maybe 1 or 2 more meetings, and then we're kind of closed for a while. Maybe they'll have some things on Zoom. We're not sure about that yet. But and then we've had moth excursions that we've gone out in the evening and looked at the moths. We had a great presentation last month by Bob here. He gave us about Maryland butterflies. We've had people that have showed us how to pin butterflies if we find something, like we found a red spotted purple. Joe saw it get hit by a car, and he picked it up and brought it home to me, and it was still in pretty good shape. So I've learned how to pin it so that I can have it for display. A little raggedy, but it still might work. So we do like many things here, and I think the main thing of it is we're all here to share it. We're here to share it and make sure, and the people that taught us helped us in the very beginning. There's too many people to name them all because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but this lady here, she helped, she's shared many things with us. Her daughter has, you know, we've had other people that have shared things. And I think that's the basis of this club. I think the basis is to come, to learn, to share, and to make sure that nature's here for many more years. So do you want to go on?
That's good. Yeah, it's the same. I didn't work with little ones. I worked in nursing homes and the hospital. I'm a horticulture therapist and worked geriatrically, and now I'm retired. But, actually, in 1995, I had met a lady who, at my meeting in Chicago for the American Hortherapy Association, and she was showing monarchs. And I became very close to her. She lived in Philadelphia, and she sent me some little samples, and it was in little vials of green mush. And she sent me the caterpillars, and I fed them this mush, and it was fantastic. And then in 1995, I did a program at Perring Parkway. Back then was Meridian Perring Parkway, and I think it's changed name 3 times. But that's where I was training to become a horticulture therapist. And I'm telling you the joy, I'll pass this around, that those residents were experiencing when we released some of them. And our administrator there, she has passed, rest her soul, but this is my dark hair time. Anyway, she was so fascinated, and she shared a touching story that when her parents died and at the cemetery, one was buried first and one was next. And she said 2 butterflies were flying around that grave. And it gave her such a feeling. And when I did this project, she was 100% supportive of it. And she said it just brought that back to her. And a lot of people say that, you know. So basically, some of these things, and Phyllis brought some handouts. And Matthew did the PDF if you're on email, and you can get that glossary. It's really great because Tim Hohen, you know Tim, he has the turtles and all those things. He put that together several years ago, and it's fantastic. And I refer to it a lot. So Matthew took care of that. A lot of these pictures, I'm into laminating, and it really works. My fascination this year was with the Promethea, which I've done in the past. But one of the gals, Kathy Cadow, who is a naturalist, and she works over at Oregon Ridge, isn't that where she? Yeah. And she gave me a little bag of caterpillars at the first meeting, and she had it marked as Polyphemus. And I kept thinking they were starting to eat and grow, and they were using, I had a spice bush. She said that's what they would like. And that did not look like Polyphemus to me after a while. But anyway, it turned out to be Promethea. And Bob has a male and female. I just took little pictures right here and laminated them from a book. And by the way, speaking of books, you can go online and there is a slew of books. There's no way I was going to sit down and write publisher and all that stuff. It is absolutely amazing, isn't it, Phyllis? Yeah. That's all kinds of books. And I must have about 30 books. And I refer to them. But the nice thing about this is we can call each other or we come to the meetings. Now, the COVID set us back, let's face it. We just couldn't do all that meeting. I have a disabled son. I have to be careful where I'm moving around, and I stopped working at the nursing homes, the retirement communities, and in the hospital. I had to stop because I could not bring that home to him or myself. I'm not that young chick anymore. So anyway, but this is just a compilation of the joy and the relaxation, no matter how tense I am, and you can tell my husband I get wild. That calms me down. And he's been very sparing because I'm in there for 2 hours while he's watching television and I'm not sitting with him. But it is very important to me. And sharing here at the Natural History Society, Maryland, I also had belonged to the Herpetology Club. There's so much richness here, this building alone. And it's just so nice that you can pick up a phone and ask someone, you know, I'm having trouble with this, and well, try that. Just like you switch from the parsley
To
to the
Angelica.
Angelica. And it worked. What's the other name for the golden Alexanders? ZZ or something?
Zizia.
Zizia. I cannot find a thing on that, but I could feed them that. I didn't think about that. But anyway, any questions so far, or?
And next year, I hope to have some pots when we start again of
Yeah.
the Angelica, so you can, it can get, it's all over my yard. So if I say to my husband,
Yeah.
go out and get me some Angelica, he just goes out and picks it like parsley. And for me, it's great because I don't have to worry about
Yeah.
going to the food store or going somewhere to find more parsley, which they can eat a lot. And, you know, and another thing that I do is, if I'm doing,
You have to be careful.
you have to be careful. And if you,
Right.
another thing that I do, I don't do it so much for the Angelica because I have, but in the summer, since Dee and I both, last 3 years, each year I've raised over 100 monarchs. So if I've been told that monarchs from the time they're a baby caterpillar till they go into chrysalis eat 18 leaves. So if you raise over 100, that's a lot of leaves. And so what I do is I go place, when I get my
3
leaves.
years, right?
Yeah.
Over 3 years.
Every-
Okay.
No, every year I've raised over 100.
Every year. Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, I raised it. Right now I'm at 112. Last year I was at 100 and what was it, a 38? No, the year before
And in
138
Hamilton?
in Hamilton.
And that's,
In
you know,
Hamilton.
and that's the city, you know?
And so I get the leaves, I put them in a Ziploc bag
Uh-huh.
and I put them in the refrigerator. And
And
then I either wash them off or whatever. So that way, like I tell people that are starting this, especially with kids, you don't want to have to go out every day and look for milkweed leaves. I mean, you should have it in your own backyard.
Well,
You know, right now I have it in
I
my
do.
own backyard but it's the end of
Yeah.
the season, so it doesn't really matter. But no, that's what I do. Angelica doesn't really kind of hold up as well and the thing in the refrigerator, but you can do it. It gets a little wimpy. It doesn't have a sturdy stem like the milkweed and things like that, but you can do it and they'll eat it. It doesn't matter, just so it's greenish. So I also, what I started to do when I first started this, so I knew where I started and where I've come, is I have a journal. And I write
That's good.
I have a journal that I write the date, and like yesterday I had 3 and I had 2 females and 1 male, just for my own, just to see when they started coming in, to see when, when was a lot of them and whatever. I also do that with some flowers, so when flowers will just, whether you believe in climate change or not, I just do it to see when certain things are starting to bloom and when they weren't compared to last year and things like that. And I've gotten a couple of kids around my neighborhood. They've been interested in writing things down now that they're old enough to write things down that they can, see what they get excited. Like the other day, a little girl that was down for me, she's like, Miss Phyllis, I have a worm. Do you want to see it? And I said, sure. Well, she showed me the worm and I showed her the black swallowtails and the couple of monarchs that I had in the butterfly house. So having a journal is nice. You know, just keeping your caterpillars and learning about them more is nice. And like I said, when they're little, if you want to keep track of them, you only have to put them in here. And like I said, I just kind of open the bag a couple times a day, maybe twice a day. They have enough air because they're only little until they get bigger. And when they get bigger, I put them in another container.
And I'd like to share with you another thing about that. Sometimes I'm not too comfortable with having them in a plastic bag, but when they're little, it's okay. During the COVID, I wasn't buying over-the-counter meat, and I bought these little things, like luncheon meat came turkey and beef and all that. And I found out that these things absolutely were fantastic to raise the little creatures in. I have to make sure I mark it plants or caterpillars, not food. I reuse them for food, but in a few holes, and it's amazing, this little container. Now, if this were May or June, probably June, July, I brought containers if we were going to share anything today, but we don't. It's the end of the year now. And what happened to me about 3 weeks ago, I heard through the grapevine that the Greer Nursery, I'm in Harford County, where I buy my herbs, and they don't spray anything in that area. They were trying to get rid of their parsley. So anyway, long story short, I met a guy who volunteers at Ladue and works there part-time. And he has another gal who's raising hundreds of them. She was coming too to get the black swallowtails. Not the monarchs. She raises a lot of monarchs, thousands. Anyway, so he said, I called, I said, he said, and yeah, come on, we have it. So he put together 2 flats, 24 and 24, maybe a little less than 24, but 2 sets. And when he was gathering the parsley, there were so many little babies, black swallowtails on them. And this other gal was coming, and I know her, and he said, I think she wants some. I said, she does? I said, well, he said, but I said, well, let me call her up. Anyway, I called her up and she's on her way. And she said, no, take them. I'm just coming because he told me he has them and they're going to throw it out. They threw all the basil out a week before. Oh my God. Oh my God. And you can dry that so fast, zapping or something. But anyway, long story short, I got there and I ended up with 2 flats, $52. Okay, doesn't matter. Parsley, man, they were eating like crazy, but I have quite a bit. Now I'll put them in my herb garden in Harford County over the winter. The first year they'll come back 1 more year, but the second they go into, it's like a biennial. It's not, oh, no, it doesn't work. But anyway, yeah, they make flour and it's a mess. So I'll do that. But I had Angelica that I had forgotten the plant that Phyllis gave me, and it's doing fine, and it's very easy to transplant. So that was good.
Yeah, I have a question just about the Angelica. So I have a whole bunch of caterpillars like you do and they have just completely demolished all the parsley that I had. I took all the plants out of my garden, brought them into the classroom. They ate it all. Can I switch them to Angelica or will they stick with parsley once they started eating?
You know, I've noticed, and I can't say for sure, because like I said, everything is an experiment. I've noticed that now that it's the end of the year, like if they can't find a food source, they'll go to it. But usually in the very beginning of the year, if they're on like parsley, and I can get them when they're in the first instar or second instar, I can very easily, I trim it all around, make sure there's nothing left, and I put them in with the Angelica.
But
and
you
then
can
they'll
try
accept.
it.
But you can try it. Yeah, you can
You're
try
not
it.
gonna lose anything. Try it on a few of them.
Yeah.
Because if it's gonna work, it's gonna work. They have to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to eat.
And the other thing is go around the place and find some, I haven't seen a lot of Queen Anne's lace. There's
No, Queen Anne's lace is another one that we were
Yeah,
up
you
at
can
his
just find
cousin's
that,
house and I found
know?
a black swallowtail on that.
But the interesting thing, when we were at this other place that was raising these, and she has a different kind of a milkweed she's doing. And she had a container where some was the regular common milkweed, and this other milkweed,
Like a softer plant, I got it.
and they go back and forth. They were eating this,
Yeah,
and then they
I
were
did it all
going this.
summer.
So I have a feeling they
Yeah,
might.
I think now, and I can give you a couple of
You
strengths
can't
out
lose
of it.
anything.
Because like I said, I did it there,
I
you know. But I did the same thing. We were at Flower and Foliage. I don't know if
Yeah.
anybody goes there, but it's a really good flower place if you like flowers. They don't have a whole lot of native plants, but it's a great place if you know, for anything. It's off of Ebenezer Road. It's on Vincent Farm Lane. And I was by, and Joe's looking in the herbs, and he finds these caterpillars in this dill, and I'm like, I'm taking them off of the one and putting them on the other one. And I told the girl, I said, I'm doing you really a favor. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, I'm taking all your black swallowtails so you don't have no plants there, and you can still sell those plants. And so, and then she wanted to know more about it, and I started teaching her. And then we were at a steam show, and these 3 little kids were catching butterflies, and I started talking to them about it. And they're sitting down, and Joe had to go because they were only about 4, 5, and 6, and they were sitting down, and I'm on the ground, and I'm telling them all about moths and butterflies. And Joe went over to the parents and says, I just want you to know she was a teacher, and she's teaching them about butterflies. Parents were very happy, but you know, it did look
Right.
kind of, who's this lady with my 3 kids here, you know, but it did, you know. So I, you know, that's kind of one of my passions of raising these 2, is to teach other people, and either adults, children, whoever it is. I'm texting back and forth to my cousin who's in Ellicott City, and she's now thrilled because she's had 2 monarchs that have emerged and a bunch of black swallowtails. And so I can't cheat, you know, we haven't been able to connect because of COVID. So, but we text back and forth and everything like that.
Well,
So,
the thing is too, while this is joy and fun, there's sadness to this.
yes.
And you know, the OE and the different kind of creatures with the fly. I had examples. There's a picture showing where is it? Oh, I had it right here. Anyway, the creature that we'll get into, the chrysalis. And there's these long strings that you kind of know, and it deposits its eggs inside of the chrysalis, or the caterpillar rather. And the caterpillar doesn't know it, it's still eating and doing all that, and all of a sudden it's looking limp and hanging, and then sometimes you see a string. And what I did this summer, and I never tried it before, I squashed them, and out came a pupa. So they go in as an egg, they eat the larvae, eats and comes out and makes the pupa. And what does the pupa become? It's the fly, that taffet fly, I think that's how you say it, isn't it? Taquita fly, and it's awful. And I saw one in my habitat, and I get like hyper because I have so many different ones. And I left the thing open a little bit, and I saw that fly in there, and I grabbed it and I crushed him. But one of them got it. So this is also part of raising anything live. You have this, and you know that it's been infected because the poor butterfly that might come out looks deformed, terrible. And then the chrysalis turns black. You can pass that around. And one of the swallowtails, something bore right into that. It didn't come out of that hole. That was a creature. So that's part of raising these things. And we, you know, but the pupa, when I crushed the caterpillar, the little larvae came out, and I flushed them. Flushing. You know, and that's, I wanted to get rid of them.
If you ever want to see, it is the coolest thing. I show my students it every year. It's a they have National Geographic has done a video where they've taken a camera inside of a parasitized caterpillar, and they show you the larva, and then they also show the process of it eating its way out through the caterpillar. Sad, but it's phenomenal. It's a great video. You should definitely watch it if you're interested in the process, like what happens and how it happens.
Right.
It's really cool.
Well,
So-
it's the thing is that this is what happens with a lot of the sinks. And the tomato sink farm, this is the hog farm. And the little things that come out are the cocoons on this. They're the white cocoons. Okay, and they That's it. It's a done caterpillar. Okay. This one I raised. It was on my tomato plants. None this year. Who else said they didn't have any? You didn't have
I
any.
didn't have any.
You didn't have any. And we always get them. And I had 2 or 3 of them, but this one lived. And it's kind of pretty moth. Got an orange here and there. Kind of pretty. But that's amazing. And this is its little, what do we call it? It was the hawk moth. What do you call it?
It's a tomato hornworm.
Yeah.
Tomato horn.
What's the thing called? I forgot.
Sphinx.
No, it's a pupa. Yeah, there you go. But anyway, that's it. Yeah, and it's sad. You can't, and I thought, I didn't know, were they eggs? Were they eggs? What is it? Yeah, right. So you have, now, the other thing, I fell in love 2 years ago with the pipe vine. I had bought some pipe vine from, what's the guy, a native guy.
No, cola.
Cola. And they grew very slowly, very slowly. So one day it was snowy summer. And I went out, came back from the bank, and I looked out there and what's that one there? My gosh. And I don't have a picture of that. I couldn't find it. Hundreds of little dark eggs, and then they came out like bananas. And right that day that I discovered them, I called somebody at the club and I said, listen, I have these pipe vines. And this person said, I can't believe you're calling me today, because the lady in Prince George's County or Montgomery County is a nurse, and she has these beautiful plants and no pipe vines caterpillars. She said, could you? So we arranged it, and it was during the COVID. We were outside, and she's a nurse. She wore a mask, and I gave her about 30 or 40 of them. I love them. I was so excited, and last year I had them, but none this year.
No, I didn't have anything from your.
No,
plant.
no, I'm
nothing from-
talking about the pipe vine. The pipe vine, no, and they're beautiful little things. Now, when you see stuff like this that's hanging on a string, a lot of times, because I have to move the chrysalis away from other things, or I need the habitat, or I need space, I will put glue on the end. Just regular Borden's glue, and it works, and they come out. But look at this pretty little color of the pipe vine. I bought so much more pipe vine, and then I got another variety, that one that I
you gave me.
and I started to see some of them, but none of them this year. And 2 or 3 people I noticed, they didn't have them. Ladue didn't have them. Sue Myers told me we didn't have them. So I don't know what happens. Nature.
So if you want to know some of the host plants too, that you can plant in your garden, and that one poster, it's all the butterflies. On this one, it's all the moths. So you can,
He
look.
did the PDF for that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you can also look at that and see, what. Does anybody have anything they want to share? Their luck or questions or luck, or how you did? You had luck with your black swallowtail. That
I got
I-
2
they
black
were what-
swallowtails.
yeah, there was a couple that were here one meeting, and she didn't have anything in her hand, and I said, look, here, take these.
Well, I was specifically looking for black swallowtails because I knew I had a bunch of golden Alexanders in my front garden, so
And they did it.
And they
it
did.
filled my dearest wish. And,
That's
they
good.
both turned out to be females, and I hatched them, or they whatever hatched themselves in here, and one of them kind of hurt like her wing as she was stretching them out, because like I'm a total novice. I had no idea that she needed to like climb up on something and sort of let them drape out and dry. So they dried okay, but just a little bit of the little sticky outy bit came off, so she was easy to recognize. And so she, we released her, she flew off, and then a few days later, she came back pregnant.
They do
and
need room when they're in that process. You have to put
Yeah.
them in something.
So now I
bigger.
have a much bigger like,
Yeah, you
thing
need,
with the
and
the
the mesh things
Yeah.
are really, we
Yeah,
have a
dimensions
couple of
wise.
them, and it's really better to
Yeah.
do where they have room and
Live and
air.
learn. So now this is just their little carry.
Yeah, carry,
Yeah.
right.
You know? So, but that, I mean, she turned out okay, like
Yeah.
she flew off, and then it was easy to recognize her when she came back and laid her eggs in the dill and parsley in the window box. And I probably cried a little bit when that happened, like, I was like, she came back. So she came
Did you
back
take
and
the
laid.
eggs or did you wait till they turned?
I
into
waited
feathers?
until they, the eggs hatched and the little caterpillars came out, and then I was like, well, I guess these are my grandkids. And so I brought in all of those, and another female came back that might have been the other one I released and laid some more eggs. So I think we had 13 grandkids.
Good,
We had, and then, released those and more came back, and it was just like a cycle all summer. It
good.
just kept coming back.
You didn't bring them in then, you let them just stay on the host of the plant?
You mean the
Did you raise any inside or?
Oh,
on
yeah, I
porch? Mhm.
Yeah, so I would bring them in and then snip. The golden Alexander actually holds up really well after you've cut it.
Hmm.
Like it has a good strong stem.
Yes, it does.
So I was able to, bring a lot of them in, but it was getting
Yeah,
crowded.
we
So
have
that's why I got the big one.
I haven't thought about using that, I'll try it.
So, and also big win, my son just fell in love with the caterpillars.
Good.
He's on the spectrum and he has like
Oh.
auditory like sensitivities in a good way. Like he loves the
Yeah.
sounds of some things. So I pointed out to him that you can hear them munching on the leaves if you
Mhm.
Especially the
if you're
cecropia.
real
Especially
quiet.
Cercopias.
So yeah, so he was real quiet and leaned in. He was like, oh, I love these caterpillars. And from then on, and he was also used to be afraid of butterflies because he got stung by a wasp. So
Right.
all flying things were like
Right.
terrifying as a child.
Isn't that
And
remarkable?
now he's like, I can't wait to release another butterfly. And he's like always, the one to like put his hand in and sort of goodbye, little beautiful thing.
That is
So
wonderful.
sweet.
That's a wonderful
The
story.
kids really like, especially the Cercopias when they get big.
Yeah,
When I do it, the nature class, so they just really, when I open up the bucket and they see it and they're like, wow, these are so cool. They really, really seem to like that. So
and
anyway,
they don't live long.
no, they just,
They just have no swallowing or.
no mouth and no,
They don't, they just.
Kids are shockingly small.
Just me.
They don't eat.
they do not eat. That's what, and when I've done two,
Yeah.
I've done two little fairs, one for our neighborhood association and one for another one. I was asked to do that one after they saw what I did at ours. And when I tell people, I said, like adults especially, I say, well, these moths like Nunos and Cercopias and Polyphemus and all those, they don't eat. And then the moths, I said, caterpillars do, but the moths don't. They were like, what do you mean they don't eat? How do they live? And I said, well, their main thing is for breeding and to be, and food for birds. I
Yeah.
said, so that's what it is. And they just like walk away like, they don't eat. Even the adults are like, the kids are like, okay, whatever, but but they're just like.
I didn't think of.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
sure, and it's a wonderful, that's a wonderful story.
Yeah,
But the thing is that somebody did tell me that I have the two that didn't want to, one left today, but it was the last of the Mohegans. So basically, they said, so then it becomes food for other things if they don't make it to Mexico.
oh, I don't like that. Yeah, but you gotta remember, they do, we don't want them in Florida right now anyway.
No, we do not.
We don't want them to go, the monarchs to be going to Florida with all this going on. So, but you gotta realize they like fly like 200 or 300 miles a day or something like that. So they still they're going down to these warmer climates and they, have a good chance of still getting down there.
Really, it's 200 to 300 miles.
I think so. I think I had read that somewhere, yeah.
Has anyone tagged the monarchs
We
before?
did,
We've done that in
we
the
did
past,
do
yeah.
that.
I'm interested in that. It's been
We
great.
did do that a couple of years ago, before COVID. Before COVID, we did have a tagging process and stuff like that, and I think.
But
if
not
you could-
here,
but
not in the club.
Not in the club specifically, but she,
did
yeah, we had gotten,
joined with somebody else, didn't we?
yeah, we had
I
done it,
remember that.
yeah,
My
I,
grandson was really into it.
yeah, and you can tag it and things like that. I think, yeah, it was here.
Constance gave us each so
Constance
many
gave it
tags.
to us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she gave us a little packet
must
of
have been
tags
away.
and stuff like that, but, so we haven't really officially done that. I don't know if she got the tags or bought the tags or whatever, but I know, if you do like Monarch Watch, I'm not
Right,
sure
Monarch
they-
Watch.
They probably have.
It
things. You know, and everything like that, but we did do that here. We also did, Jim, did pinning of the butterflies, and I'm sure Bob could show us how to
Tim
do
Young.
that too. I'm sure Bob could show us after you see his beautiful specimens. He could probably show us how to do pinning too, you know, maybe for next year and things like that. But we've got to go to Ladue, and the moth nights are kind of cool too, to go out and to go out and have a bright light, and see the moths that all come and everything like that. Yeah, that's kind of fascinating too.
The other thing is, if any of you have the interest and meet other people sharing the interest, it would be good to collect information for the club, so that if we possibly are trying to keep it going more than, I don't think it would really work in more than October or September, October, I don't know. But if you have any information from your sources, be good to do something. We could have that on Zoom, and you know, in that way we don't have to come here. I don't like traveling from Hartford. It takes us about 45 minutes to an hour, and
The other thing, in the winter, you're kind of ready to
In the door.
be done.
the dark. Well, this ice too. I mean, that gets frozen up there easily. So, but anyway, it's a wonderful hobby. And the other thing is, Sue Myers had called and asked me if I had something like 22 eggs of these guys. Okay, I can take it off. And I was so fascinated with them. I was just in love with them. And basically, she asked me if she could have two. Phyllis wanted to. I said, well, I can give you one or two. I said, because I don't know how they're going to do. I don't remember raising them before like this. So anyway, I went over to give her two, and Sarah, who also involved, and you know, Sue Myers is retiring. This is her last part. She wanted to come tonight, and she was interested if it was going to be on Zoom so she could see it. She's a fantastic person, and Ladue isn't far from where I live. So I brought him over, and Sarah just very quickly put him on the plant, and they had him in a jar in the little front of the. So so one of the little volunteers said, would you like to do a tour again? Yeah, I said, I haven't done it for a while. So we came back out, and they weren't moving. And I thought, the heck, dying. So I said to him, but do you have a paper clip? He said, I don't know what. He starts opening these cabinets and everything. He finds a paper clip, and I clipped the leaf that I brought them to what she had in a jar in the front of the butterfly house. I went home, and mine were acting so strange. And I thought, my God, I started with 20-some, and now I don't know what's going to happen. Well, it ended up, I have about 9. So it's half. I gave her 2. I have about 9. That was half. And I did everything the same. So what happened, and I did not know this before, I did not know about molting. And I've been doing this for a good while. So the molting, they were going through a little rest period, and they looked like they were half dead. I think some of them were. But anyway, they just dried up. And so I called Sarah, and I called Roxanne, she's another one over there, and I got them all going with that. They said, well, I think they're okay. And Sue got back with me. She was off that day, and she got back with me, and she said, Dee, just give it a chance. It might, I don't know. She said, yeah, it looks weird. So a couple days, maybe a week, 7 days, 8 days, they started to eat again. Aren't they the most adorable things? Look at that sweet thing. And they were having a grand old time. But I learned by just experiencing that molting is part of
The process.
the process. You know.
Sure.
Yeah. But I didn't know.
I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that. So that's molting.
So,
Yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
at Ladue Butterfly House yesterday. I saw the Prometheus caterpillar.
Where?
Was it?
At Ladue.
Ladue.
Oh, at the zoo. You saw them? Oh, good.
Yes,
Did you
it
all
was
look-
a, I saw only one. I
Oh,
took a picture, but I don't know, but.
Was
maybe
it, did they have them in the house or outside in the lobby part?
in the lobby?
Yeah,
So that's it.
no, I was
Yeah.
upset about
So
that.
you were saying that the molding process could take several days?
It took a couple days for my estimation now. I mean, I kept, and they were
Yeah.
giving me feedback and finally, Sue said, it's the molding. And I thought, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
I've been doing this.
I-
Do they all mold?
All the
Everything?
caterpillars?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
so-
never watched the
so
monarchs? They have
maybe-
patents or they mold?
Yeah.
So
I've seen
then with
but
that,
they're still
I
not
got,
as
yeah.
inactive as she's talking
But
about.
they still stop. They have like a
Right.
moment of rest. And so like they munch. And then right before they molt, sometimes they'll actually leave the leaf and sit on the side of the thing.
so this
And then
is,
you'll come back a couple hours later and you'll see the shed skin underneath and
there's,
there'll be a
there it
new.
is, right here.
a new
There's molding,
insert.
right?
Yes.
There's the,
Cecropia.
Cecropia,
Yeah.
and there's the molting.
The black swallowtails did too. They also have it.
Yeah.
Weird.
You also scared me because I got two Cecropia caterpillar from Constance, I think June something. And when I brought back that for entire day, it just stopped doing anything.
Yeah,
But that was just one day, and then it got bigger. It was already third in
but they
star
go
stage.
through a rest period before they
It
go
was
next
a
to
long,
the next stage.
yeah, it was a long time. It
And they
was-
act like they're dead sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, I know, but that's it right there. I captured it, didn't even realize. Word molting. It's amazing. By the way, I am involved with the Caterpillar Lab up in New Hampshire. I think it's where they are. This Samuel Jaffe, I purchased a lot for my Christmas and birthday presents. I have their 365 calendar thing, and this year I got the big one. And during the winter, I was out there in the studio. My husband has a sculpture studio in a barn that we remodeled. And so I stayed out, he's at one end and I'm one end, and I'm laminating these little guys and I'm looking this one up. And it was so relaxing just to have that time. I'm not working, miss it. So anyway, but that's it.
Anybody else want to share anything?
Yeah.
Charlotte, how did you guys do? She lives not far from us, so she says, I called her up and said, oh, guess what, in May, I said, guess what, I had a monarch that passed through, and I said, Joe watched it, he thinks it laid some eggs, and then I went back, and I'm going back and finding all the eggs, and so I called her up, because she lives up the street from me. So,
And my granddaughter, 5 years old, is the one who found the first monarch caterpillar. We've been finding swallowtails a lot, but she was out there and she said, look, I found a different kind of caterpillar, and it was a monarch. Right next to all of our milkweed, which last year, for the last years, I've never seen a monarch caterpillar, but this year we had quite a few. And so I got really excited, and so she was excited, and we brought some in, and we have a butterfly house like that. We put the monarchs in there, and then the chrysalises are so beautiful.
They are.
Really are. And
Look at my necklace.
I was wondering, is that a
It's
real?
not a
Christmas?
real one, but it looks it.
No, but when I teach, when I work with
They
children,
do.
I wait with the older kids to see if they recognize
Yeah.
the pattern, because here's the caterpillar.
Yeah.
Which the caterpillars and the butterfly are made out of cereal boxes, which I think is kind of amazing.
Oh, I've got
And then
some of those, I've got some of those.
Yeah,
earrings.
and then the chrysalis,
I love that.
and so when I reached, my first year that I reached 100, that I raised 100 monarchs, my husband and my son bought me the necklace, so.
That's beautiful.
And for the little kids, I tell them, I said, well, here's the caterpillar, here's the chrysalis, here's the butterfly. The older kids, I see if they pick it up, if they watch, because I taught a homeschool class, it was middle school class, and they automatically, they picked it, they
You
said,
got it.
oh, you have the whole cycle there. And I said, yeah, I do. I said, I was waiting for you to see that. So, yeah.
By the way, there's another word for molding, and it's called sheds. And these are one of the Cecropia sheds. So there it is, but the word never hit my brain. So this is a shed. Now, I raised a whole bunch of these one year, and I raised them in a 30-gallon or 40-gallon aquarium. Not good, not enough air. This did not make it. It's in there. It did not emerge and close, nothing. It's in there, it's dead. I cut some of them open and they're very dry. But this is the Cecropia. It's such a beautiful moth. The moths make cocoons and the butterflies make chrysalis. And it's sad that that happened, but I lost quite a few of them that year. Remember? Yeah. Mhm. So, yeah. Anyway,
Anybody else want to share anything?
they all make a little different kind of a cocoon, the moths. It's interesting. Go ahead.
So I didn't get any monarchs until like the last month.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to all of them. But then all of a sudden, and I was worried that I wasn't going to get any. Kepner the same.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we got some, but
And you said you had a lot of milkweed. I was
yes.
supposed to come down there and get some, but it ended up I found some more.
Right, I remember we
It
talked.
was
about
like that with me. We
Yeah.
had that one that
But I
came
mean,
in May.
what
If you look at my
happened?
journal, it came in May. And just like, and so I was getting like all excited. It's like, oh, monarch, you know, and then I had these
No.
little ones, and then it was like this really, really dry
Yeah.
spell. And until about August, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
it
the
seemed
end of
like that,
August.
and then we started seeing more and more.
But
and more.
somebody said it's because of the, they needed to be real hot, or I don't understand why they were so late in coming.
No, I don't
But
either.
the other thing
That
is.
It's kind of a cold, wet spring. Did that have anything to do with it?
Did that, yeah.
It probably slowed it down. I had a few before the rush.
Yeah.
But now I'm worried about them because they're all still in chrysalis.
Chrysalis, yeah, I have a lot in
Well,
chrysalis.
that's
And
like I
I'm worried
said,
about them,
My
you know.
friend and I talked about this, and she said it's going to be food for something else.
Mhm.
That in
I
don't
had
mind.
like that.
one-
I don't like
The
that
latest I've
idea.
ever had
That's
them emerge was
what they do.
October 25th.
You did?
October 25th is the latest one I've ever had emerge. And I
Well-
remember because it's my birthday, so that's why I remember, that's the only reason I remember it was that late.
just
Yeah, I've had a
released it.
lot of them.
I'll let it
emerge in
go.
October.
Yeah,
You
well,
look
it's
at
gonna
my-
die in the cage otherwise,
I
so.
I've let a couple go this past week,
I think
and then
they'll
I'm
be a-
thinking, but then I have a
There's
friend
also-
here
Look
from,
at the
I
cold
have a
tonight.
friend here from Arizona, and I'm like, well, maybe I should give her the rest of my
To take back.
chrysalis to take back on the
yeah.
plane,
I
so
don't know
when
if
they
that's
hatch, they
legal.
can, be warm.
No, but I agree. I had, not this year so far, but last year, I looked at my book and I had a lot of them that emerged the end of September and in almost the middle of October.
I got to the point where every time I went to feed my monarchs, I would clip a leaf and find a new one.
Mhm.
And so I just kept adding to my collection. And so even though I started late August, I had like 30 of them. Because they just I kept finding every time I clipped a leaf. And I have that tropical milkweed, and I know there's some like
Some people like it,
controversy,
some
think
people
that
don't.
they think it's because it's not native and it's,
Incarnata, that's a swamp, the incarnata.
it's the one that has the orange and
Yeah.
yellowish or orange and
Butterfly
reddish
weed?
flowers.
Is it the weed, the butterfly weed?
It's a variety of milk.
No, it's
milkweed.
probably there is a tropical one. I did buy
It's a
one of
tropical
those
milkweed.
tropical plants somewhere, and it has like the orange and
Well,
the red.
It's seeded all over my garden, and just started popping up everywhere. And every time I clip a piece of it to feed the monarchs, I'd find more caterpillars on it. So they loved it.
This
Yeah.
was the incarnata, and I bought it. And
Okay.
I found that I had more problems with the caterpillars. Now, my rain garden is in front of the house, and then there's these other ilex verticulata in front of that, and then the stone house. We used to have them come out of the area where they were raised before I would bring them in, because I'm trying not to bring them in, but this was a couple years ago. They crawl across the grass, across the stone. We have crushed stones all around. We have this major irrigation problem at our house. And up the stone wall, and they would hang their chrysalis. We didn't get a one this year, maybe one. They didn't do it. And we're very careful about him cutting the lawn around there, because I don't know how they travel at night or whatever. But anyway, it's so fascinating, and it's, look at this. It's
And there
just-
was a gentleman that I met at the North Hartford Fair. He was all excited because I had brought them, and I had at that time, it was in August, I had some monarchs. I had a monarch and a black swallowtail actually to show them, and then I had the caterpillars. And he had told me that he had 40 monarchs on butterfly weed. So I was like, and then like I was just telling some people, I learned this year, and maybe other people know this already, but if you, once the butterfly weed blooms, if you trim it, it will rebloom.
Yeah.
So.
Not just that, the Sererica, the common one here, you cut it back in the first week in July, and it comes back very tender,
Right.
and they like that.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's very good to know that, because it gets messy, and you see all the creatures that are on it. Where did I have that? Here. The thing about this is, that tussock moth that's there, that it's compatible with the caterpillars, but I don't like all the aphids getting on them.
Oh,
And this year it was really heavy with
This year was
aphids.
very.
Right.
Yeah,
I
and
had
here,
lots of those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I had more of
And
those
they
last
say
year
leave
than
them
this.
alone.
well, they don't bother the caterpillar. They're doing something with the seed and all that, and you don't, well, some of these people that I know, they will not plant these because they're rhizomatous and they don't want any of that on their property. Well, we just pull them up if they're in a problem, but I use them. And this one is the tussock moth. You see the little kind of cute little thing. Well, look at what I found on the leaf, and I didn't know. And actually,
Is it a tiger? Is it
Tussock.
milkweed? A tussock moth. Okay.
and he's the babies. There's the caterpillar.
Okay.
There were hundreds, and I
Oh,
think,
wow, I've
I
never
think Jim
seen
Young
them.
told me what it was. I said, I
I'm
sent him stuff.
constantly looking. at them.
Constant, and I mean, I killed them all, because the tussock moths, oh yeah, I did. Because they were eating all the milkweed that I had available. And I'm sorry I killed them, but I did.
Oh,
Now,
what
his
kind of
co-
butterfly did they become?
His cousin told me that
I'm
like,
sure I don't
if you
know.
see like the rural rhizome and the common
to bring
milkweed
it
come up, if you can pull it up straight up, and then if you find another spot to put it, you get a screwdriver and you kind of like bore a hole, so you don't like dig it, you kind of just put it in there, and I've had pretty good luck with it, coming
Well,
up.
I've never had a problem with having. it
Bob, what
lined
does
up
the butterfly
milkweed.
look like on the tussock? I had a picture of it and forgot to bring it. It's
Tussock
a
moth?
it's a moth, it's not that.
It's, I don't think it's super exciting.
Oh, you have a picture of it? Here.
I don't mean to be rude. I have to go. My husband has got a meeting to get to.
All right, yeah.
That would be great, because I do have a few that need
And
to
what-
use
and why
something.
don't
It's a white,
Let me
it's a
get your
white,
piece of
yeah.
paper and I'll make it.
Oh, awesome.
So then that way, if
Yeah.
you need more.
Okay.
you can call
Okay.
me.
Or is
Yeah.
it this one?
Where do you live?
I live in
This
Chelsea.
is
Okay, well, I live right around here, so it's not that much, not that far, but you can give it a try.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I can pull this out of my garden like tonight, in the middle of the night, and know where it is.
Yeah.
That's awesome, thank you. I'm saying, I don't think I got any caterpillars, because you really don't want to lose one. You don't need another caterpillar.
Nope,
though.
I got plenty of them.
Okay, well, get this.
I have 4 ones that are still eating right now, and I just need to give them something. Thank you very much.
Sure, let me give you my phone number.
Yeah.
I haven't been back. Okay, well, maybe.
Yeah, first reading. And they gave out, eggs and caterpillars.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to
Yeah.
get her started, is to come and get the eggs. And
What was the first meeting, Phyllis? Was it June?
I think it's in May.
Was it May?
Right.
Oh, okay.
I think it's in like April or
But
May. isn't it?
it was, we didn't have that this year.
No.
The COVID has set us aside a little bit.
Yeah.
So
But in
hopefully,
the past, that's what we've done.
yeah, in the past it was prolific.
Yeah, we've been to one of the moth watching nights and we had such a wonderful time. Do you all do things like that when there's time that certain butterflies are hatching or passing through, that you get together to watch them?
I don't think that, we're talking about moths or butterflies.
I'm asking if you do any
Butterflies?
with butterflies.
I
Yeah.
don't think so.
No,
The gardens and
we've
stuff.
actually gone to Cromwell before and looked for, because we've done that with Constance, where we've looked at, if we go
For
to Cromwell
caterpillars.
and look for caterpillars on the milkweed and
Oh,
so
that's
forth.
And
there.
other plants, maples. Remember now, Kendra, her daughter loves the Io.
Yes,
And I was raising the Io and they
They're moths,
sting
though.
terribly, they're moths. And I let them go because it bit me. And this is, we're talking 5 years ago. I have not gotten rid of the red spot. 5 years, and now I've got a bump from my, like arthritis. So I Kendra, when I found them this last year on the red maple leaf. And I posted it and she said, oh, I would love that.
Run over probably.
So we met, I gave them to her. She was so happy. I don't want them. I put them under the tree that they needed to be and forgot about them. The IO is a killer.
Well, anything that has all those like hairy things,
And that's 5 years
they
ago.
usually sting.
Like woolly bear?
Oh, yeah.
Does
Well,
woolly bear stink?
Woolly bears don't sting.
Yeah,
The
woolly
other
bears
ones that
don't.
have
Okay.
all
a lot of them do sting that happen.
but the ones that have all the like the hair sticking up and all.
Yeah.
terrible. They-
Oh, like sometimes there'll be like tufts of white.
Yes,
longer.
they sting.
What are
Don't-
they?
don't
Okay,
pick
I
them
will.
up, but we won't.
Do
They sting.
you know what type they are? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I saw that we have one of those, and remember I tried to look it up, and I couldn't really kind of find what I thought it was.
Is the one going across the banister up and down?
I think it, you know what, no, it was here, and I think it was the one that defoliates like sycamore trees and stuff like that, so you don't want
Interesting, okay.
Yeah, I think that was the one that, because my one from the little girl next door was telling me, oh, it's Phyllis, there's all these caterpillars. I said, what do they look like? And she told me, and I'm like, no, I don't want them. No, I don't want them.
And I won't
You
put it.
know, so anyway.
Go right ahead.
Thank you so
It's a
much.
biologist.
Yeah, okay, that's a good start.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't the best Zoom ever.
If you have parsley in your garden,
Parsley,
they will-
they
will-
You have to see what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yes,
Mine
They are
were,
so easy.
mine this year, it was mostly the fennel. The fennel
that
that
go with
we
people?
comes from.
Okay,
We found
so
like three,
Yep.
3 or 4
It'll
yesterday.
be okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just
I hate to tell.
These are your pens. These are
The
yours.
red one is
Come
fine.
back next year, I'll have this mine, have what,
Angelica, I guarantee you, you'll have no problem.
Isn't that
Let me
amazing?
figure it out.
I was so excited. Now, see, I was given the caterpillar. And you have to realize, and I had a lot of pine trees. I had all the properties, got pine all around. And it was, oh my God. And